What's up, gamers? Today we're going to talk about something super light and uncontroversial, religion and spirituality. And so today I just wanted to chill out and have a little discussion about a lot of the a lot of the double-edged swordness of both religion and spirituality. A couple disclaimers. So I'm going to be talking about mental health stuff. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am simply in school for it. And if you actually have something you want to talk about, or like something that you've been thinking about, actually see someone who's qualified. I am just speaking from my experience. None of it's meant to be taken as advice. And additionally, um, nothing I say is meant to be is none of what I say is meant to like uh invalidate anyone's experiences or anything like that. I'm actually not claiming that like religion or spirituality is a wholly good or wholly bad thing. I think that's up for the individual to decide. I am personally very spiritual, but I understand why some people like aren't. Well, many people aren't actually. Um but and I understand why like a lot of people are religious and everything like that, like regardless of your religion. So so this is not meant to make a whole statement on it. It's more about like what to look out for in general, because I just think that people should be well informed when they talk about stuff like this. Um and when they get into stuff like this, like things that I think are a little problematic about it, um or have the potential to be problematic. I was raised very religious, and I don't think I had any like negative experiences and stuff. I don't really consider myself very religious, but I do consider myself very, very spiritual. So I actually am not. This is not coming from a place of like trauma related to religion or anything like that. I just think that like it's important to preface, because a lot of people really hate religion because like, or spirituality, because it gave them like really bad or invalidating experiences in their life, and it could have led to further isolation. And a lot of people got a lot of benefit out of spirituality and stuff like that. So I feel like it's important to talk about. So first off, let's talk about first, before we get into like other stuff, like what does religion and spirituality do positively? So spirituality, I'm going to speak a little bit more from my personal experience. So like spirituality is actually not based in faith, really. It's actually like more so what the value I got out of isn't believing in any particular god. Um, it's actually, or like deity, it's actually a really cool way, especially like as a psychology student. It provides like a frame of mind of how the mind works, and kind of presents like a, oh, okay, so like we self-explored and we think that this is how the mind works. So like you may call this like the default mode network, we call this the ahamkar, like the or your ego, and stuff like that. And then like, and like, this is like, like this is the manas and stuff like that. And like this is, oh, your brain is like this, your avata, stuff like that. I actually, it might sound like it's kind of semantic-y, because it's just like, okay, well, how does phrasing it in a different way help at all? And I just think that their model is a lot less confusing, more accessible, and more importantly, more applicable, in my opinion, than a lot of Western stuff, at least to me. Um, Once again, I don't want to make it seem like therapy isn't a good thing. You should absolutely get therapy. I'm literally going to be a therapist. I'm not at all trying to devalue therapy. I'm just saying that when it comes to Western theories, I think that they are very good at progressing the science, but I think that like a lot of the times when you explain Western theories, uh, they're very not applicable, and they're very to a lot of people. Like there's no action plan for a lot of them. They're often very vague. Sometimes cannot do not apply to specific people, or yeah, they just kind of like, they're very like, oh, if you are going through this specific thing, maybe it's this, and like there's not really a way forward from there. and something about that kind of always made me wish that there was like something more we could do that. And so what I really like about spirituality is that like it provides a lot of context of the mind that is actually supported by Western science a lot of the time. I don't want to get off the impression that it's wholly like that. There is a lot of stuff in spirituality that just has no like scientific proof to it. So don't take it as like, oh well, we've proven all of it. It's just that um, like we are finding more and more in science that like concepts of spirituality are actually very applicable and kind of track with our understanding of the mind currently. Um, so that's all I'm trying to say regarding that. I'm not saying anything that it's like concrete or anything. Um, but like I find it to be very applicable and actionable, and more importantly, you can kind of explain spirituality to someone and like they'll be able to relate pretty much every aspect of spirituality to their own life and have applicable ways to progress in life. Um like with their new context of the spirituality. So like that's like what I've gotten out of it is that one when I frame my life in a spiritual context and I use these like terminology and all this sort of stuff, I I when I frame my life in like a very spiritual context, I'm able to um I'm able to understand a lot about myself, and I find that the action plans it then gives are actually very the action plans it gives are actually very effective for me. Um Especially as someone who has very much struggled with like ADHD, low motivation, technology addiction, all that sort of stuff. Um and so I found it to help me, and it also doesn't require any amount of faith. Like when it says like when people are like, oh, you're a vata, so like you're like a wind type mind and stuff like that, like I don't believe that, like, and they didn't believe this either, like they're not saying that like your mind is full of the element of wind and stuff like that. At least that's not how I understand it at all. It's actually about just like being like, oh, your mind is like the wind. Like they were just making comparisons based on observations, and I actually really resonate with a lot of the comparisons that they make. Um, and I find that it's just very wide reaching and applicable. Obviously, it's got a low compliance rate because of like because a lot of people just, if you don't identify as spiritual, it's really hard to accept any part of spirituality. But I don't think you need to consider yourself spiritual to just be like, okay, do you like think this is a good framework? Like if you see this part of your brain activating, or can you be like, okay, I noticed that part of my brain activating. You don't have to call it this or whatever like that. Like just, are you okay with that? And doing this as a practice and stuff. And if you can just agree to that, I tend to see very substantially positive changes in people's lives. Um, and I'm actually gonna wait to talk about its negatives until afterwards. I'm actually gonna wait to talk about its negative aspects until afterwards because I think that they're pretty much the same as religion. Um, with religion, it kind of operates on a very spiritual framework in the sense that like, hello, chaotic chemistry, what's up? I'm just talking about if you have any questions related to psychology, just let me know. I'm just a therapy student. I've done all the book work and all that sort of stuff. But if you have any questions, I'm just talking about religion and spirituality, and I'm not making any blanket statement on whether or not religion or spirituality is like good or bad. I'm literally just talking about like what I notice are like the double-edged swordness of like why they're so controversial, like why religion and spirituality tend to be like things that people either have terrible experiences with or very positive experiences with. Because I think there's like a really like they're very definable in terms of like how people tend to have bad experiences versus good experiences. And so what I think is like good about religion is the same as like spirituality and stuff. Okay, yeah. No, Yeah, because I'm gonna relate it to psychological context. So yeah, if you so if you have any questions related to psychology or anything, I'll absolutely get to that after I'm done with this topic, which I can make as fast as I want. Um, and so like it kind of dissolves the ego, like the sense of self, because like when you surrender yourself to a god that is far like greater and more unimaginable than you could ever see, then like your mind will like stop focusing on yourself. And this is actually very scientific because like the default mode network is like our ego. It's the part of our brain that can understand that like we are like it can contextualize past things that have happened into an identity for us. It's a way that can comprehend our sense of self, and overactivation of the default mode network is what leads to things like depression. Um, and so a lot of people are like, I was depressed and then I found God. I'm not saying that the component of God does not exist. I believe that you should believe whatever you want to believe. But if you are from a scientific orientation, then a big explanation for that is that when you do that, that's a very Buddhist idea. Yeah, exactly. Like I consider myself Buddhist, in general. And that's what I mean. It's like it's exactly like connected with spiritual ideas. And so like you can if you just think that like people who are religious are just like stupid and it's like, oh, they're hallucinating that they like found this god or whatever like that, like then if you insist on being from like a scientific orientation of the mind, then just conceptualize it as, oh, they surrendered their ego to a godlike figure in their mind, which means that they are able to dissolve the ego and therefore disarm the default mode network. Um, so that's kind of how you can view it, as that. So that's what I think is a really big positive. Another big positive aspect is the community of it. So like we know that like from studies, especially that a lot of emerging studies on social interaction that came like sociological stuff that came from like COVID and stuff like that. We all know that like human interaction is like absolutely necessary for a healthy mind. It might not be absolutely necessary, but like from my knowledge, it is absolutely necessary to a degree. um like if you don't have human interaction, there's something with the brain that kind of shuts off. And like they've done studies and experiments like that, that like were probably very unethical, or like they like, oh no, I actually think the thing I'm thinking of is actually something different. I think that was an accident, but like people didn't have human interaction when they were children and stuff like that, and they basically reverted to like a primal state. Like it was like almost like they were monkeys. um and so human interaction's very necessary, because we were built as like tribal creatures. Like human beings are intended to be tribal. We are actually not meant to be individualistic. And that's built into a lot of our DNA because the ego is only important in a tribal setting. Like it's only important when there are other people. So like we actually can see that the mind was built from the ground up to be very tribal in nature. And that's kind of proven by the existence of the ego in the first place. Um, so, uh, so when the ego, so like, yeah, so we can disarm the default mode network through religion, and also the and this is like pretty much regardless of your religion. It's mostly common in like the depending on your definition of religion, like the deity based religions. I don't know if there are any religions after that, 'cause I'm pretty sure the definition of religion implies that there is a deity. But which is why it's like so weird sometimes to call some things like Buddhism a religion, because it's kind of not. I personally has good and bad experiences with a religion. When I first became religious, it was really bad for me because I became religious for fear of hell and teachings that were first exposed to bad for my mental health and made me develop OCD. But then I was exposed to more liberal and healthy spiritualities that made it really well for me. Yeah, so that's good. So that's great. That actually relates a lot to what I'm about to talk about. So when you are so now so now we understand that like spirituality provides a framework of the mind, very actionable, very doable in nature. Um, and um, and then and religion additionally, religion like spirituality dissolves the ego, and it provides typically a communal based thing. It provides stability in terms of routine. This can be very good for people with things like ADHD. Because like when you learn to have like a schedule and stuff like that, that can manifest in very like positive behaviors later in life. I'm gonna turn this thing on. There we go. So yeah, that can manifest in very positive things later in life. Um, Now there's obviously many bad things. There's like cults and stuff like that. And so um, and so like what I don't think is good about like from at least a psychological standpoint, you can argue that like an ends justify the means and stuff like that in spirituality. I can't necessarily debate that. Like I don't think I'd win. But like so like if this makes sense, so like we are brought up to respond to specific stimuli in specific ways. So like if you are so like let's say you're very so let's say you're brought up to believe, like chaotic chemistry saying, that like if you do this you will go to hell, therefore you should not do it. Seems very logical, seems like very argued, like I would argue that that's like fair. Like it's like you should, if hell does exist, you should probably try and avoid it, because that sounds pretty bad in hell, right? But like if this makes sense, I know it seems like it's purely adaptive to respond to fear and negative things with avoidance. But like that can actually manifest in bad things later in life. And so like an example of this is like social anxiety. So like a lot of people are like, if I could just get myself to overcome my social anxiety, I'd be able to progress in life. But at a young age, if you were taught to avoid negative consequences at all costs, at the cost of who you are, at the cost of your personal values, at the cost of everything, then your mind will be like, well, why would we stop at social anxiety if we already gave up everything to like avoid things like hell and stuff? You're literally training your brain to like respond to specific stimuli in a certain way. So your brain will form a vasana, it'll form like a mental habit of continuously like seeing a negative stimuli that is like, let's pretend it's specifically fear, and it's like, okay, every time we see fear and we see punishment and pain and stuff like that, then we're gonna run away from it. And so like this literally teaches you to like you said with OCD, like to compulsively comply with the avoidance of negative emotions. And this really affects things like people's conception of like willpower, and it really can end up screwing them later in life. Um, Another negative aspect of this is people who are like cult leaders who take advantage of people's faith and fear. Once again, cults operate on this exact same principle, where like that's why everyone says, like, who doesn't like religion says that like religion is a cult, because they have a lot of similarities that it's very hard to tell the difference. It's like a very nuanced thing. But when you are but like when you're in a cult, they will essentially tell you, like, if you don't follow this cult, then this will happen to you. And what have you done due to your religious upbringing? You then are compulsively avoiding the negative stimuli, because you're not taught that you're allowed to make a choice to live your life the way you want, even though it's going to result in this bad thing. What you were told is that if there is a negative stimuli, you must comply in order to avoid it, and that you should be avoiding it. Um, so that's like really important to acknowledge in this process. So so it kind of like in very overly simplistic ways that I don't really believe in because I don't really believe in things like willpower necessarily. I actually think that it's a very nuanced machination of the mind that isn't just as simple as like, well, if I want to do it hard enough, then I can do it. Like I think that it's more complicated than that. But like essentially it's like religion can remove depression through the removal of the ego, but like what it also can do as like a negative thing, um what religion can do as like a negative thing is like um is teach you that you cannot tolerate negative results or punishment, and that really reduces things like stoicism. um but it can also really improve things through things like kind of like your dharma. For will of power is like free will, an illusion. Yeah, yeah, so like that's another thing is that like do you get how like your perception of whether we have free will affect what you do, but it doesn't necessarily prove one or the either, or the other. um and once again, like with in the concept of free will, like people tend to think of free will as like a thing where it's like if you don't believe in free will, then to you you have no agency because it's like, oh well, this was destined, and this is people's excuse to be apathetic. No, that's not like what free will is. Like if someone was healthy and didn't believe in free will, they would simply still try their best and accept responsibility for what they can control, but also understand that like life is karmic. It's like due to cause and effect. But it doesn't, but like you choosing to not put effort into something is still a choice. Like, and so like it's really just dependent on whether or not um you think that like outcomes can be fully predicted as an equation. But like even then people will do that to shirk responsibility. Whether or not free will exists should not affect the way that you go about life. Like it just shouldn't, because regardless, life would be karmic. Um and so yeah, like so like in regards to like religion and spirituality, it is a it is a it can be really good for people because if sometimes people use their duty to people to like beings like God to motivate them in like a dharmic sense of duty, and be like, I want to like this thing is really emotionally painful for me, but through the dissolution of things like the ego, then it makes it suddenly possible to be able to do things like um it makes it suddenly possible to do things like what am I trying to say? Um like things that are very hard for us emotionally. But like that's only but like you guys have to understand that like I just talked about how like your willpower is reduced through religion, but now I'm saying, oh well, I can actually have you do anything and stuff. Then what you do in life, if this is the path you take, then like and like you have both the positive and negative consequences that I happen to be describing at this moment, doesn't mean that if you're religious all this is going to apply to you at all. But like if these things do apply to you, then like you have to think about how like then what you do in life is determined by your religion. So like you have so essentially consider it like you have infinite willpower to like do any task, but only the tasks that are like align with your religion. And if they don't align with your religion, then then like you actually, if you have these negative outcomes, you actually have decreased motivation. I hope that makes sense. If I'm not doing a good job explaining, just let me know. But yeah, so like that now we see like why people can have such positive or negative experiences. Because like think about how traumatizing it is for a kid who has not given their ego up to like God, when like you tell them that like they are nothing compared to God. Like it's just like think about how like you still have a sense of ego and you're being told that like you're nothing by comparison. Um So like that's so tough for a child to deal with. That's super demoralizing, and why a lot of kids grow up with a negative experience, because if you go that route where you tell your kid that like they are only worth what God deems them as. I'm using very hyperbolic things based on what negative experiences of religion have told me. I'm not saying that religion does this automatically. But like you're basically, if you do that sort of parenting, you're basically banking that it's like, okay, either my kid will fully submit to God and like become a servant of them or whatever, and then like, or if they don't, then like, they're gonna have low self-esteem and they're not gonna be able to do anything for themselves in life. But like, basically, you're kind of locking your kid into being like screwed whether they stay with you or leave you, regardless. So that's why people that who have described to me their negative experiences of religion, that's kind of what I see. But I think that as long as unfortunately, I think that like in religion, you kind of have to just accept that and this might go against people's religion, and if that's insensitive, I'm sorry, but like I think that like legitimately the best way you do religion is like the same way I described communication in a video that we had a while ago, is that like in order to convince people, you need to let go of convincing them. So like being an advocate for God doesn't mean forcing people to believe in God. It just means like saying what you will and then like letting them make their own choice. And if they make the wrong choice in your mind, let them make the wrong choice. Because I think it's overall worse for the movement and worse for the people in general if you go about this attitude of like, well, I have to because I'm saving them and stuff like that. That's at least my opinion, is that like I think people convince people way better, and when the other person feels open to disagreeing. And I also think that those sort of, when people are interacted with in that way, it leads to manifestations of healthier behaviors later in that kid's life. Let's see. I'm a compatibilist. I believe everything is reduced to cause and effect for both the physical and mental processes. We are still responsible for what we do, and we have freedom when we're acting without external coercion in accordance with our inner desires and influences. So yeah, like I've never heard of the phrase compatibilist. But I would pretty much agree with what you said. I think I pretty much agree with all of it. So like I'm of kind of the I'm not set in any way, because we have good studies on this, but we don't have like definitive proof by any means. I think that's like really hard to do in something as complicated as the mind. But my kind of belief is that life is karmic, and that a lot of like, I'm very spiritual and I'm very scientific. And I think both the spirituality and the science both kind of fit this narrative that like everything is based on a universal law of cause and effect, which is karma. And so like, and I believe that, and I do think that like if science continues to get better, my prediction is that like actions will become more and more predictable as technology and science progresses. And I do think that theoretically you can predict what people choose before they choose it. It's just that it's really hard with the technology to predict it. But even with the technology we have, that's sort of showing that could actually happen later. Like it's showing that actually with the science we have now, it's actually becoming very predictable already. So that's kind of crazy. Um, but yeah, I think I agree with everything you say. I might have to like review it a little bit more and think about it. But I mean, my views on it aren't set in stone. I'm just acting on like what I have seen and believe from like things I've learned from both spirituality and science. I think that like a big overlap is that like life is based on cause and effect of karma, but like also if you believe that you don't have free will, it's actually typically going to result in a manifestation of behavior that tends to just be like shirking responsibility or lazy and stuff, because it's like, oh well, I should just do nothing all day because I couldn't control it. And it's just like, no, I mean, it's super hard to describe how karma works, but like it's still your choice to be apathetic. Like, but then like the argument is that like, oh well, you would have always chosen to be apathetic. and stuff like that. But like you still have agency in what you do right now. Um, it's just that like it's kind of based on the data that that your mind computer has been like inputted into it. If that makes any sense. Um, so yeah. Um, so overall, that's kind of my view on spirituality is that I think that and religion as someone who's raised religious and considers themselves a lot more spiritual than they are religious, I think that like there are very healthy ways to go about religion and spirituality. And I think that like there are a lot of people who cite religion as like the main thing that helped them, and I think that there whether you believe in God or whether you or gods or whether or not you believe in like um or whether or not you believe in like the scientific machinations of it and stuff, I think that the most important thing is that like you go about it in a healthy way. Because whether or not you believe in religion, I think that there is kind of a pretty like definitively unhealthy way to go about it, at least in my opinion. And there's like a healthy way to go about it. So like you have to kind of understand that whether or not you really don't want like your kid to go to hell or whatever, that like there are things that you can and can't control. Like, and you can't like force someone to believe in something. And like, so, I can't make any choices for anyone, but like, I would say that like, you can't force someone to believe in anything because then they're just going to disingenuously believe in it. And furthermore, it's going to actually lead to them a lot of negative behaviors manifesting later in their life if you do that. So yeah, I would recommend, even though this isn't an official like recommendation and stuff like that, I just recommend that you you really analyze like how much am I forcing people? How much does other people's compliance with my religion affect my mental health? How much does my compliance with my own religion affect my mental health? Like, do I even have any internal sense of happiness outside of this religion? Because then your belief is also arguably disingenuous, even though that might be a very inflammatory statement. But like, to me, I don't think people should be dependent on anything. And I think that God would not be opposed to anyone having an internal sense of happiness outside of God, because then you can truly choose God. Because then at least it's not like out of a desperation to give you more dopamine and direction in life. It's literally just like, yeah, I could have happiness in other ways, but that's why I'm choosing God. So I think regardless of whether or not you believe in God, it's very important to cultivate an internal sense of happiness in general. I was exactly like this. I was escaping responsibility, not really caring about the thing, and what really saved me was reconnecting with what I call God, which is sort of a bigger energy entity that is full of love and peace. Yeah, exactly. So like that's what I mean is that like if people truly were born to believe in God, I think that they will get there on their own. And like that might be like a crazy statement to say. And once again, I'm treading so carefully here because I don't want to offend anyone, but I also don't want to be disingenuous. I want to give my honest opinion about this sort of stuff. Like, I think that I think you just gotta let people come to their own decisions, because what it leads to if you try and force people into religion is, sure, it gets a lot of people to be coerced into it and like, oh yeah, your whole life is gonna be miserable, but you'll thank me because later you won't go to hell. Like, that sort of mentality is going to like also alienate a lot of people now, because now there's this whole there's like the hate for religion is on the rise, and like it's partially due to a lot of people who like religion's fault, because like I know that they have good intentions because they're just trying to save people from hell and everything like that, which if you believe in hell is a very valid thing to do. I would say it's almost like logical to shirk your happiness for this life in exchange for eternal happiness in another life. But like, my point is that like, regardless, you're like, you, in the words of Mr. Miyagi, don't sacrifice, like, never pick passion over principle. Even if you win, you lose. Even if you win, you lose. In that same way, even if you win, they probably aren't even going to genuinely accept God into their heart. You're probably on average increasing the odds that they're actually going to reject God and tell people to reject God later. And so I think that actually the best strategy is same advice I would give to political movements, is just to simply give your message honest and thoroughly, and then like if people reject it, don't bully them for not rejecting it. If they make a mistake, that's their mistake. But like you literally, despite like you can like you literally just cannot force someone to have a specific mental pattern. It's like literally impossible to do. So yeah. Talking about Buddhism, something I noticed in analyzing Buddhism and Hinduism, which Buddhism is based in a lot in, is that reincarnation is seen as a good thing. Like the whole point of the religions is to escape the cycle of reincarnation. The religion is to escape the cycle of reincarnation. And personally, the idea of reincarnation is scary and tremendously bad to me. I personally don't want to live multiple times and suffer with karma. So like, what I would say about that is that I'm not sure exactly the context in which you're saying this in, but like it's like the ending kind of like implies because like it's like I don't want to suffer with karma if I live multiple times. That assumes that like, you know, like you're going to like, so I get no, I take back what I said, because I get what you mean if you mean it in the sense that like, you know, if I live pain in this life, then like a future life is also gonna feel that pain. So it's almost like double the pain rather than like freedom from the pain. Like if you believe in something like heaven, and like that makes a lot of sense. But like no, like I don't think that that's illogical in any way. As some it's hard to say whether or not I believe in reincarnation. I like because it's really hard to say whether I believe in reincarnation, because I absolutely believe in the concept of having memories from past lives. I mean, that's even like if you're super scientific and not spiritual, like think about it, like that's literally where instinct comes from. Like you literally have memories and adaptations from past lives. So that is proof that like past experiences from from your family tree will then descend upon you in very cognitive neurological ways. Um and so like, you know, like like if you're so yeah, like that's my so that's kind of my take on like so I believe in that absolutely. I'm kind of unopinionated on whether or not we like literally like our essence goes into them and like we were different people in the past. I'm typically way more on the side of like we just simply share memories with them. But like even people who believe in shared lives and stuff understand that like it's not scientific and it's more experiential, and like but like it's just something that like when you experience it, it's hard to like not believe it. Like in the same way that like, you know, people who feel the touch of God aren't just gonna simply accept that like that didn't happen. Oh, by the way, thank you for the follow. I forgot to acknowledge it like 30 minutes ago. Once again, the ADHD, I forgot about it. But I appreciate it. But yeah, no, I get that. I also think that it's, what I really like about things like Buddhism is that like it may seem kind of weird, but I've kind of learned to like live my life independent of the axis of like pain and pleasure. So like I don't do things based on how pleasurable or painful they're going to be. I base my life off of like what I believe is like my duty. Like I live my life very dharmically. And then, you know, I also choose to like, because I'm not attached to enlightenment, it weirdly results in me doing more dopaminergic things, because like I want to just, it's just like in the same way that like Buddha became enlightened because like he like not I'm comparing myself to Buddha or anything, but I kind of am for the purposes of like my comparison to him. But like there like in the same way that like the way Buddha became enlightened because he was like, you know what, fasting is stupid, I'm just gonna have some rice pudding, and then he just had rice pudding, and then he was happier than he ever was when he was chasing enlightenment because he let go of enlightenment. I think that like if I ever become enlightened, I'm gonna stumble into it. I don't think that it'll just be like this thing that like a switch that gets turned on. um I think that like it's just something that I'll be destined to do because like I think that if I chase enlightenment, I'm gonna like move away from it. So that's kind of the axis of my sense of Buddhism. Um, that's kind of how I live my life. And that's like what, and I learned a lot of that through spirituality. Like I learned how to find my duty, my dharma, which is based in my karma. So like, you know, circumstances have allowed me to like stream mental health topics, and maybe I can make an impact. And even if I can't, then, you know, at least I did my duty by trying. Like I can't control whether it happens. Like my dharma isn't dependent on whether or not I successfully do it. It's based on like what can I control and did I try to control it. And so like that's a lot of what I've gotten out of spirituality. Like I think that like now suffering, like if I were to suffer in a future life and stuff, I'm hoping that like my sort of pseudo enlightened sort of state that I've gotten out of spirituality, where I'm able to look at things independent of the axis of like suffering and happiness, that like that would transfer. And so despite my suffering, I'm able to still like a future incarnation of me would be able to be free of that cycle of like pain. But I do think that's actually a very interesting topic to think about, is like, do people I think a very interesting topic to think about is like, do people who become enlightened in a future life pass on their enlightenment, or is it like a separate journey you kind of have to go on and stuff? Like I wonder if a kid could ever be like born enlightened based on spiritual teachings. I don't think so. um I don't think that could I probably don't think that could happen, but also if it did happen, I wouldn't be like shocked. I wouldn't be like, "Oh, I never thought that could happen. That's crazy." Um but yeah, like a lot of people, even, I mean, even though I'm being very like skeptical about it, I think that even like I get weird looks when like I tell people that like I do believe in the general concept of past lives, in the sense that like we can have memories that are literally just not our own. Like we can have kids that like never ever learned about a specific event happening. Um we can learn about kids having like an event that like never happened to them, and they could describe it in like full detail, and like they've never learned about it and it didn't happen to them. So like it's crazy that that even happened. Um and so that's kind of why I believe in it from like both a scientific and spiritual perspective. But I'm a little bit more skeptical about like the like literal like your essence kind of gets transferred sort of thing. So that's just where I'm a bit more. And by skeptical, I don't mean like I'm denying it. I just mean like I'm a little bit more like I'm a little bit less opinionated on it, and I don't have like a strong opinion. I'm very like open to like seeing like what I think about it in the future and thinking about it. Oh my god, yeah, the mind is truly something interesting. That's why I love psychology stuff, because like I notice that like I get bored of things very easily, and the mind is like the one thing I never get bored of, because not only do my own experiences change so often that I can use it in a context of myself, but also we are not going to figure out the mind in my lifetime. It just won't happen. There's no way we're gonna figure out the mind in my lifetime. It is just impossible. It is not going to happen. Um, so yeah, I just think that I completely agree with you. It's like it's such a common saying, but it's absolutely true. I think that when we I think that like and especially because like with science you could like, I mean, with the mind you can explore your mind in different ways. Um like like you can like we can literally like explore our mind in different ways in contexts like spirituality and like we can be like, oh, like what if I believe in like a spiritual lens, and even within spirituality there's separate like yogic paths and everything like that. So like um and then there's um and then like, you know, it's like, oh, what about in the context of religion, what about in the context of like, what about in the context of religion? What about in the context of science? Like, what about in the context of all these things and stuff? And like, all of that is like equally explorable, and you get to like, it's almost like a personality test. Like, you get to like determine your path in life. How am I going to view my mind for the rest of my life? Am I going to be, am I going to assimilate all these ideas into one and kind of be, not just a singular discipline about it? It's just so fascinating to me. One question: since you said you're Buddhist, do you think that we're not the same? We're not the same person through our lifetime, since everything about the mind is changeable according to Buddha. So like, that's the thing about Buddhism, is I don't think we are our mind. Like, I don't think that we are. Depends on, a lot of people have different definitions of like the mind and the brain and stuff like that. But like, I think that like my view is like the yogics, the yogis view of like the mind, which is that we are niti niti, which is like we are not this, not this. And so like anything describable about the mind, I don't think is you. So like, because so my answer to that is that like, because the mind is forever changing, it's not because the mind is constantly changing, that's proof that it's not us. So like, I think that the essence of us is whatever is unchanging. Um and that even in itself is like vague and like debatable, but like that's just my view of it. So like, whatever you so like, you know, I'm streaming right now, so you could call me a streamer, but like, I'm not a streamer in essence. That's just a conceptualization of my identity. I'm happy right now. I wasn't always happy. That does not remain constant. Like, and so to me, if we're to find the true essence of a thing, it's what is unchanging about it. Like, if we continuously change the form, like like if we have like a piece of Play-Doh, and like, you know, we set it on, like we set it on fire, we throw it in the water, we like step on it, we do all this stuff, we form it into the shape of like a tiger, we form it into the shape of like a lion and stuff like that. Then like, you know, it's like, is the Play-Doh like, is it the Play-Doh a bunch of char? No. Is the Play-Doh water? No. Is it a lion? No. It's like, it's the Play-Doh. But like, the thing about the mind is that the mind is like uh like, the thing about the mind is that like, I want you to imagine the mind as like a place with no mirrors. So like, the mind doesn't have any so like, the mind doesn't have any components that, in my opinion, can observe itself. So like, what I mean by this is like, if you're angry and you notice that you're angry, the anger doesn't notice itself. Like, do you guys get that? Like, the anger just exists. It didn't like the anger didn't see itself and go, oh, look, I'm anger. It's like, there's a separate part of you that understood that you were angry. And it's like, that part, and like, there's a part of you that understands that you that like, you understand things and stuff. So then you kind of have to fold back the layers of it, and then kind of figure out like, okay, where am I? Like, where do I fit into all of this? And it's literally just that like, you are nothing that you could ever see, because no part of the brain can observe itself. Like, there and so um and so I think that in many ways I'm a different person, but I think in essence we never change. I think someone could be a completely different person, quote unquote, from who they were, but I think everything that's describable about our personalities, our emotions, our existence as a whole, I think literally all of it is I think literally everything about our existence is not actually who we are. Um, I hope that makes any sense whatsoever. Because it's a very weird kind of concept overall. Um, that I don't expect people to be fully on board with. But like that's what I've found value in. So like I'm not someone who likes green beans just because I liked green beans in the past. But like if you ask someone like who are you? We're like, "Oh, I'm someone who likes this. I'm someone who doesn't like this." It's like, "Oh, how do you describe yourself?" It's like, "Oh, I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor." It's like, "Okay, but you were still you every time." So like if you're someone who like doesn't really believe in that, then like I would say that like the answer to the ultimate question is like, yeah, you do change. Because like in that case your answer to the ship of Theseus would be it's a different ship. But I'm saying that there's like a part of the ship that never changes. Yeah. Um yeah, there's like a part of the ship that never changes to me. But that's like totally subjective. That's just my understanding of it, and I agree with that conceptualization of it more than I agree with other interpretations of the mind, because I think it has the least amount of like I think it has like the least amount of holes from what I've seen, which is also benefited by the fact that it's kind of an unfalsifiable hypothesis, because it's like very easy to just be like, oh well, you can never find it, haha. Like you're never gonna find it, so don't even bother trying to prove me wrong, sort of thing. Um, and so like it's very convenient of me to kind of believe in that, but I acknowledge that that's like probably like a reason that I believe in it. Is that like it's once you understand it, it's really easy to believe in because of that. Um, so yeah. Um, but yeah, cool. Um, any other questions? Got any other questions? Um, if not, it's totally cool. But like, I'm always down to answer more stuff. But yeah, I think that like religion and spirituality uh has like religion and spirituality has a lot of benefits, and I've certainly been on like the better side of it, but I absolutely understand why people in life have like really bad experiences of spirituality and religion. um and I'm not saying like I'm like, oh yeah, I get it because they're bad. I'm saying that like I think they can be bad. I personally don't think it's a like like as someone who's spiritual who can acknowledge this, I do not think it is an indictment of spirituality to like or religion to like I don't think it's an indictment of spirituality. Yeah, I'm probably about to end stream too in that if that's the case. But yeah, I d- thank you so much for stopping by and following, and I hope to see you again. Thanks a lot for your awesome questions. Um, yeah, after this Stardew Day wraps up, I'll end stream. But yeah, like I don't think it's an indictment of spirituality to like say like, oh yeah, well it can be bad, therefore it's like its own fault that it's bad and stuff like that. It's like, no, like anything can be bad. Like water's not bad inherently, but like if someone drowns, then it's like, oh well, you're still saying water's not bad and stuff like that. But you have to acknowledge that like water can hurt people if water is not handled safely. But should I say that, oh no, water's bad, so we should never use it because it's hurt people before? It's like, no, like we like water helps people survive and stuff like that. So like I don't think that's just wholly one way or the other. Um I think that there's like a big caveat to like all those sort of like hyperbolic beliefs. Um, so I think that like if it like you have to decide what's right for you and what's not right for you. It's my belief that if people believed in spirituality, that it tends to help them more than it hurts them. But like I can never ever make the decision for you that like, oh, so that means you should be spiritual. Like, I believe that on average, if people choose to accept spirituality, they tend to be happier. But that is from like my very narrow-minded, singular experience of a singular person and the people that I solely have interacted with. No one else. Like, I can't have other people's experiences, so I can only speak from my own experience. So like, I just have to acknowledge that I'm human and my experiences could be flawed. I won't even say wrong. Like, sure, I think you should accept that too. But like, you don't have to be like, you don't have to not believe in your faith. You can believe in it with all your heart, but just like acknowledge that like you can't force people to believe in something that they don't want to believe. And like you only have your experiences to go off of. So like, you know, it's going to make people feel really invalidated if you're like, "Oh, yeah, you know, like I know why you're doing this because like you're just that because this and everything like that." Just like let them tell you. Like literally, I think an effective strategy, something I'll wrap up with is just simply ask people like what makes you, what like upsets you about religion? What like makes you, and then like their response will probably make you feel very defensive. Or additionally, like on the other side of it, ask like what like if you don't like religion, say what do you like about religion, and then ask them, okay, can I share what I don't like about religion or what negative experiences I had, and just have an open dialogue. It's like such an emotionally charged topic, but I've got another video on how to effectively communicate that I suggest you watch if you haven't seen it. It'll be on my YouTube channel, and for YouTube watchers, it is on my channel that you are watching right now. So that's just my opinion on it. And I think just whatever you do, you should make the best choices for you. And I think everyone should be able to make their own decisions. Even though that in itself is probably a controversial statement. And so yeah. So that's it. I'm gonna wrap up stream. But I'm glad because I'm done being sick, and we had a pretty good stream today. We had some good questions, and talked a lot about my own experiences as well as sciencey stuff. So I love talking about this stuff. So if y'all have any question, if y'all want to come on the show anytime, let me know. We can set something up where we can have a call or something like that. Like. We can have a call, and we can talk about either trauma or more sciencey stuff or more lighthearted stuff, just something related to psychology in general, please. If you don't want to be on the stream but you still got a question, ask questions in the YouTube comments or come by stream. Yeah, I'll see you guys.